Hello, everybody. In case you don't know me, I'm Beth Rusky. I'm one of the managing partners here in TR International. Thanks for being in our resource circle. One of the things we have for you today, you've clicked on a specific tool about requests and promises. That's what our tool is today that we're going to take you through. So thanks for being in the resource circle. If you have not downloaded this tool already, I need you to download the tool because we're going to walk through several things. So I'll just hit pause here for a second, or better yet, you can pause me. And you can then download the tool. Awesome, let's get going. So there's gonna be two key components that we're gonna talk about today. One is the language viruses themselves. Sounds like a lot, I know, language viruses, what is that? But it's based on the work of Fernando Flores. And he talks about several different ways that we actually make our language weak. So we're going to talk about how we actually can attack our own language viruses. So that's one thing. And the second thing is we're going to talk about how do we make clear requests and how do we engage in making clear promises with each other. So that'll be the second thing. We want you to pull up the tool, as I said, and we're going to get started. So if you look, I'm going to pull up the tool here for you. I'm going to share my screen for a moment so you can look at the tool while I am talking about this first part here. So the tool here is, you're going to actually rate yourself on whether or not you think these viruses are a problem for you. And there's 8 that are listed here. So I'll explain what they are. Some of them are self-explanatory. But for example, the first one is not making requests at all. Are you somebody who just never likes to make a request of someone else? Maybe you wait for them to offer or something like that, but you actually don't make requests. So put an X in the boxes. Is that not an issue for you? Are you good at that? Or is it a frequent issue for you? So you'd be at the other end of that box. And just put an X there, for yourself, rate yourself. That's all I'm asking you to do. We're gonna do this quickly because you don't have to overthink this. So let's go to the second one. The second one here is living with uncommunicated expectations. What does that mean? That means like you just don't ask. You wanna make the request, but you're kind of hoping somebody else guesses what you want. So a little bit like not making requests, but you really, really want to, but you just don't. So again, rate yourself. Not an issue or pretty much a big time issue for you. The third one here is not making clear or making, making unclear requests. So for example, you might start out like saying something like, if you don't mind, if you have a moment, would you? By the time you've even gotten around to make the ask, people aren't even with you on that anymore. So unclear requests, people don't know what you're asking. That's what that means. So is it an issue or not an issue? Our fourth one is not observing the mood of your requests. So rate yourself on that. What I mean by that is maybe you have a little tone in your request. Maybe it really isn't a request, but a command. And maybe you're not observing the mood of the situation that you're requesting into. So it's kind of a two-edged sword there. So again, rate yourself. The fifth one is promising when you aren't clear on what was requested. This would be if you're on the receiving end of the request and you just say, yeah, sure, I got this, right? And then you sit down later and you're like, I have no idea what I said yes to. So is that a problem for you? Do you say yes too quickly? The next one would be not declining requests. Somebody makes a request of you and you just take it like you're Velcro. It's sticking to you. Maybe you don't think you can say no. I don't know, but you don't decline them. Is that an issue or not? The next one is treating assessments as facts in the process. Like somebody makes an assumption and it just becomes the truth. Does that part of, in your language, is that part of your speaking? And this next one is similar to that. And are you making assessments without really testing things or grounding the assessments into what you're doing? Is that a problem for you, or do you really test the waters on things? So that's the first thing we want to do here is have you take that assessment. So hopefully you've done that with me as we've gone through it. Now in the box on the bottom of this first page here for the tool, I want you to just take a moment. We're going to have you hit pause for a moment on the recording. And I want you to just fill in the box. Any observations or insights do you have here? Do you see yourself making good requests, but then not saying no when you're asked? Or maybe you say yes all the time and you're a great requester. Maybe you're awful everywhere. I don't know. Whatever it is, see what you can see when you look at this grid at a little bit more of a macro level. What jumps out for you? So hit pause, capture some notes for yourself. Okay, great. Thanks for coming back. So here's the thing now. We know with women, and if you're a guy watching this, maybe this is for you too, but if not, that would not surprise us at all. But we see, when it comes to language viruses, we see three top issues for women. The first one is they don't make requests. So they actually are afraid to make a request for some reason. The second one is that they make unclear requests. And the third is that they don't decline them. They don't say no. So maybe one of those three things are popping up for you. And if so, that's okay. We're going to take a look at what that means, and we're going to get behind it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to trust you to follow along with the tool. So let's talk about some definitions as we go into this. So that was the assessment about language viruses. But now we want to talk about clarity of agreements, and we want to talk about requests and promises. So the first definition is, what is an agreement? And this is on page 2 in your workbook, in your toolkit. So an agreement is quite simply when you have, and it's a formula, agreement equals request plus promise, period. So if you've made a request and somebody has promised, an explicit promise, you have an agreement. So let's talk about requests for a minute. A request is quite simple. It's a formula also. Will you do X by Y? That's it. Not if you have time, would you mind, if it's not too much trouble. It's a lot of extra stuff, and it weakens your request. So a request is quite simply, will you do X by Y? Notice the tone. The tone is just a question. It's just an ask. Now, on page 2, you'll see some other notes there. A request allows somebody to say yes, no, or renegotiate. So if you were to make a request of me, I have to feel that I can say yes, yeah, I can do that. Or no, I don't think I'm the best person for that. Let me offer somebody else up. Or that's part of what I'm going to renegotiate. I'm going to start renegotiating. Those of you in the professional world, you know that you don't get ahead by saying no a lot. So you got to pick your spots. However, learning how to say no with grace is part of renegotiating. And that's an important thing for you to look at. Okay, so here's the other thing I want you to say. If you're making a request of someone and they really can't say no, don't kid yourself. It is not a request. It's a demand, or it's a command. It's one of the two. So watch if it's a real request or not. They have to be able to say yes, no, or renegotiate. Okay, so what's this promise thing mean? So a lot of us send emails and we make a request. Is that a promise? Do we think now that somebody has the ball and they're going to give it back to us? No. Unless there's an explicit response that they are taking responsibility, it is not a promise. It's an assumption on your part. And we all know what happens when you assume. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But a promise is quite simply someone has verbally committed or in writing has committed that they are taking responsibility to fulfill on your request. That's all it is. So what happens if things change? You know, we make requests of people all the time, and then all of a sudden we get backlogged, we get, waylaid with things, our schedule gets away from us. What happens if things have to change? Well, there's a couple key things. One is communicate that, and communicate it very early, proactively, as soon as you can. As soon as you know your deadline and your deliverables in jeopardy, you gotta be upfront and start communicating that. The other thing is renegotiate. I know I promised I was gonna get this to you by Friday at noon. Is there any reason why I can't get it to you on Monday by noon? Will that work for you? Will you allow me to get this to you Monday at noon? Simple, renegotiate. Now that person may say yes, no, or they may come back and say, actually, I'm gonna need to work on it over the weekend. Can you get it to me Saturday? Again, you're in a conversation, you're renegotiating. The second thing, if things change, or that was the second thing, the third thing is we want you to recommit. Like there's a recommittal now. Somebody has put something out there, you're renegotiating it. Make sure you've gotten the recommitment from the other person, or if it's you recommitting, make sure you're now recommitting with a new promise. What happens here and why this is so critical is when we don't do these three things, we erode trust at the most fundamental level. Like, we can't trust people to do what they say they're going to do because they've let us down in the past, or they're not really honorable with what they've said, with their word. So if you don't take care of these things, you're likely to be eroding trust on a big scale. Okay, I want you to go to page 3 now. The irony on this in page 3 is when we ask people, do you make clear requests? Most people say, oh yeah, I'm really good at this. I'm very good at making requests. I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to say hogwash. Most of us are not very good at making requests. Most of us are pretty poor at making requests. So let's go a little bit behind the scenes and let's do some work on page 3 in your toolkit. There's going to be 3 questions that I'm going to ask you to answer for yourself. The first one is, where am I making powerful requests? The second one is, where am I not? And the third is, what's stopping me? What's getting in my way? So please go ahead and pause the recording now and answer for yourself those 3 questions. Awesome. So knowing when, where, and why you do or don't make requests is really important. And it can give you some really interesting insights. So for example, maybe there's certain people that you won't make a request of. Maybe there's certain situations that you won't. And we want you to understand why, because there's no reason why you can't make a request in any circumstance for any reason. I think back when my sons were little and I was an at-home mom, and I negotiated with my husband. I just made the request. I said, will you be responsible for getting them up and out in the morning? My husband was an at-home dad, of course, but I didn't want to take that on. So I asked him if he would take care of the lunch. And here's what it meant. Would you take care of the lunches? Would you get them dressed? Would you feed them? Would I not have to do? Awesome. So knowing when, where, and why you do or don't make requests is really important. And it can give you some really interesting insights. So for example, maybe there's certain people that you won't make a request of. Maybe there's certain situations that you won't. And we want you to understand why, because there's no reason why you can't make a request in any circumstance for any reason. I think back when my sons were little and I was an at-home mom, and I negotiated with my husband. I just made the request. I said, will you be responsible for getting them up and out in the morning? My husband was an at-home dad, of course, but I didn't want to take that on. So I asked him if he would take care of the lunch. And here's what it meant. Would you take care of the lunches? Would you get them dressed? Would you feed them? Would I not have to do anything except give them a big love and kiss and walk out the door? And that was a clear request. And my husband said, absolutely, he'd be happy to do that. So when you think you can't make a request, that's the time to stop and look and say, I probably need to make a request here. Okay, so let's practice. Let's go to page 4 in your toolkit. So I'm going to ask you to pause the recording again here, and please answer all the questions on page 4. Okay, great. Glad to have you back. There's a question at the bottom of the page 4, and I'm going to ask you to actually say this out loud. I want you to practice saying out loud the request that you want to make. Now, I know you just practiced writing it. You got behind the wisdom behind why you don't want to ask, why you might ask, all of that. But now it's time to actually say it in words. And here's a tip for you. Don't overcomplicate it. Just use the formula. Will you do X by Y? Go ahead, hit pause right now and say your formula out loud. Okay, thank you. What happened when you said it? What happened when you said that out loud? What did you feel? What did you notice? Did you add words? Did you just stick with the formula? We have a tendency to add words, most of us. Well, definitely it's okay to add a please. I know someone says, well, that sounds so direct. Can't I add a please? Yes, of course you can say please. But if you're adding a lot of other words, stop yourself. You're complicating a simple request. Okay, so the other thing is, please remember, when you're making this request, the other person gets to say yes, no, or renegotiate. And if they can't, then don't pretend it's a request. So clear requests are our gateway to powerful agreements. And powerful agreements is what produces really awesome results in our lives. So if you want to figure out at the end of this recording, why are you going through all this, is because you're trying to produce different results and get them with a lot more ease. So there's the last box on the bottom of page 4, and it's asking you, when are you going to commit to make this request that you just practiced? So in a second, I'm going to ask you to hit pause again. But what I want you to do is I want you to go get your calendar or pull it up on your laptop, whatever you need to do, and actually put in the date and time that you're going to make this request. For some of you, that'll be a piece of cake. For others of you, this will be very challenging. So hit pause, go put it in your calendar. Go ahead and do that now. Terrific. Thanks for going through the tool with us. Let us know how things are working. Let us know if your request was a yes, if you got a no, or if you got renegotiated. Doesn't matter. And feel free to just respond here below and let us know how things are going. I want to leave you with a couple tips on this. Practice makes better. There's no perfect way to make a request. Just practice getting better at making brief requests. And that's my second tip. Brevity is best. So thanks for walking through the tool. And remember, as a Tiara Resource Circle member, you actually have access to a lot of these tools. There's so many tools up on our website in the members only section. So if you enjoyed this, there might be other tools up there that you'll enjoy too. Thanks for joining me. Bye now.